The day I was wheeled into the delivery room to give birth, my husband was away on a trip abroad with his black girlfriend, and then, shortly after the baby was born, an elderly stranger suddenly appeared. Chapter 1. Outside the delivery room, no one was waiting for her. As I was being wheeled into the delivery room, my husband was busy posting photos on his social media feed, snapshots of him and his new girlfriend on a tropical island getaway. In the photos, he wore a crisp white shirt, smiling with the giddy joy of a teenager who had just fallen in love. The caption beneath them consisted of a single sentence: "Finally living the life I've always wanted." When the nurse gently pried my phone from my grasp, my fingers remained frozen in place, still hovering over the screen. In that moment, a contraction struck, feeling like a dull blade scraping its way from the small of my back deep into the core of my abdomen. The pain was so blinding that my vision went dark, yet perversely that single sentence stood out before my eyes with crystal clarity. 星号 finally, 星号. 星号 the life I've always wanted, 星号. It turned out that neither I nor the child I was about to bring into the world were part of the life he actually wanted. The nurse murmured softly, "Lin Wanqing, don't look at that anymore. Save your strength." I tried to nod, but my throat felt as if it were stuffed with damp cotton. I couldn't utter a sound. The lights in the delivery room were starkly white. So white, in fact, that they felt utterly devoid of any human warmth. As I was wheeled to the doorway, my mother-in-law, Shen Huilan, stood at the far end of the hallway, talking on her phone. She wore a magenta knit cardigan with a jade pendant dangling from her neck, and she made no effort to keep her voice down. "She hasn't popped it out yet. She's been in pain for ages. Isn't that just how it goes when women give birth?" She paused for a moment, then added, "Qingzhou is abroad handling business matters right now. A man's career comes first. Are we really supposed to make him stand around here just to watch her scream in pain?" I closed my eyes. The pain was real, truly excruciating. But the deepest pain wasn't in my belly. It lay in the sudden realization that, when a person is at their most vulnerable and wretched, their hearing becomes unnervingly acute. Words that might have gone unheard on any other day, on Xinghao, this Xinghao day, pierced my heart, one by one. The midwife leaned over and asked me, had the family members signed the consent forms yet? Before I could even open my mouth to answer, my mother-in-law had already walked over. She scrawled her signature across the paper with a flourish, muttering under her breath, "Hurry it up, don't waste any time. If it's a boy, everything will be fine. But if it's a girl..." She left the sentence unfinished. Yet the expression on her face spoke volumes, conveying her meaning far more clearly than any spoken words ever could. Suddenly, I smiled. It must have been a truly hideous smile. The nurse glanced at me, her voice softening, "Don't be afraid, we're all right here with you." That simple sentence made my eyes well up. 9 months pregnant, the phrase I heard most often wasn't "don't be afraid," but rather, "you need to be sensible." Gu Qingzhou would say, "Wanqing, my company is at a critical juncture right now, stop constantly using your pregnancy as an excuse." My mother-in-law would chime in, "Being pregnant isn't an illness. Back in our day, we worked the fields right up until the end and we gave birth just fine." I had no family left of my own. My mother passed away when I was young, and my father died during my college years. All these years, I've felt like a sapling somehow rooted in a crack in the rock. Everyone says I have a hard life, that I'm tough, but only I know the truth, that toughness wasn't something I was born with. It was born of necessity because there was no one there to support me. I had no choice but to be strong. The moment the delivery room door closed, Shen Huilan's voice was cut off on the other side. "Let's just wait until the baby is born to discuss it. Besides, Qingzhou won't be back anytime soon anyway." I gripped the edge of the bed. A wave of searing pain washed over me. I felt as though I were being slammed by a massive wave and dragged down into the depths. "Inhale," the doctor instructed. I inhaled. "Push," the doctor said. I pushed. Yet, inside my mind, that photograph of the tropical island flashed before my eyes over and over again. Standing beside Gu Qingzhou was a tall, slender woman with glowing, bronzed skin and a smile that revealed dazzlingly white teeth. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat, her hand resting casually on his shoulder, a pose so natural it made them look like the Xinghao real Xinghao couple. I knew who she was. Amanda. The marketing consultant sent by Gu Qingzhou's new business partner. The first time he mentioned her, his tone was dismissive, foreigners tend to be more enthusiastic. Don't read too much into it. Then came the scent of perfume. Then came the phone calls at 2 in the morning. And finally, he stopped coming home altogether. When Xinghao did Xinghao see my swollen belly, he would only frown and say, "Can't you stop looking so slovenly all the time?" At the time, I was wearing an oversized nightgown, and my feet were so swollen I couldn't even squeeze them into my slippers. The way he looked at me, it was as if he were looking at a piece of old furniture that had been misplaced. And now, while he flaunted his new life on his social media feed, he had left Xinghao here in the delivery room to bear his child alone. Another wave of pain struck. I heard myself cry out. A short, hoarse cry. It felt as if I were being torn apart like a piece of tattered cloth. The midwife grasped my hand, looked at me, "Don't think about anything else. The baby is coming out now." I gazed at the fine beads of sweat glistening on her temples and suddenly felt an urge to ask, in this world, are strangers the only ones willing to hold my hand at a moment like this? But I had no strength left to ask. I could only push again and again with all my might. By the end, the pain had become so intense that I felt utterly hollowed out. All sounds around me faded into the distance, leaving only the sound of my own breathing, heavy, ragged, like a bellows on the verge of breaking. I don't know how much time had passed when, suddenly, the cry of an infant pierced through the silence of the delivery room. That cry was bright and clear. It wasn't loud, but it was stubborn. My entire body went limp with relief, and tears slid down from the corners of my eyes. The doctor held the baby close to me. "It's a girl, 6 pounds, 2 ounces. She's very healthy. A daughter." I turned my head and looked at that wrinkled little face. Her eyes were closed, and she was crying until her face was bright red. Her tiny fists were clenched tight, as if, the moment she arrived in this world, she already knew she couldn't come empty-handed. That cold, hard place deep within my heart suddenly crumbled at one corner. "Let me see her." The nurse brought the baby closer to me. I brushed my lips against her forehead. In that instant, I wanted nothing else. I no longer wanted Gu Qingzhou to turn back to me. I no longer wanted a single kind word from my mother-in-law. Nor did I want to keep asking myself where exactly I had gone wrong. I simply wanted to live. To live and to live well with her by my side. Outside the delivery room, upon learning that the baby was a girl, Shen Huilan's face fell instantly. A young nurse quietly told me this later. She said that the old woman's very first question wasn't about how the mother was doing, nor about the baby. Instead, she asked, "It really is a girl?" With that pointed belly, I was sure it would be a boy. The nurse offered no reply. Shen Huilan sighed again. "Oh, well. Never mind, we'll just have this one for now and see what happens later. Under the current policies, it's not impossible to have another one." Those words felt like a basin of stale, overnight water splashed onto one's heart. It didn't hurt, exactly, but it felt filthy. As I was wheeled out of the delivery room, the lights in the hallway had already dimmed. The baby was cradled in a nurse's arms, a tiny bundle wrapped in a pink swaddling blanket. Shen Huilan stood up and cast a fleeting glance at the baby's face. Her expression was as detached as if she were looking at a bunch of greens at the market that had been weighed incorrectly. "Why is she so dark-skinned? Who does she take after?" The nurse frowned. "All newborns look like this, she'll brighten up eventually." Shen Huilan curled her lip in disdain. "No child of our Gu family has ever looked this wrinkled." I lay on the gurney, saying nothing. It wasn't that I didn't want to speak, it was simply that I had just given birth and didn't even have the strength to lift my arm. Yet, Shen Huilan still wouldn't let me be. She walked alongside the gurney, talking as she went. "Wan Qing, I'm not trying to nag you, but a woman's womb needs to do its duty. Qingzhou works so hard out there, you really ought to give him something to look forward to." I turned my head to look at her. "Ma?" My voice was barely a whisper. She paused for a moment. "What is it?" I said, "I just came out of the delivery room." Shen Huilan froze. She likely hadn't expected me to talk back. Her expression faltered slightly, and she lowered her voice. "Aren't I doing this for your own good? Don't be so petty right after giving birth. If you get angry during your confinement month, cold energy will invade your body, and you'll suffer for it when you get old." She could somehow link everything back to cold energy. In the past, if I was late making dinner, it was because I was full of cold energy. If I refused to stay up late stewing soup for Gu Qingzhou, it was because I had cold energy in my heart. And now that I had given birth to a daughter, it was as if some stray cold energy within me had gone awry. I closed my eyes, no longer looking at her. The hospital room was a 3-bed ward. The family at the window-side bed had brought in chicken soup. Its warm, fragrant aroma filled the entire room. At the middle bed, a husband was clumsily wiping the sweat from his wife's brow, asking her repeatedly if she was in pain. Only on my side did the bedside table hold nothing but a glass of cold, plain water. Shen Huilan tossed her bag onto a chair, sat down, and began scrolling through her phone. The baby started to cry. I wanted to hold her, but the stitches from my incision pulled painfully, and my arms felt too weak to move. A nurse came in to teach me how to breastfeed. Seeing my mother-in-law sitting motionless nearby, she couldn't help but say, "Grandma, could you help prop up the pillow?" Shen Huilan looked up. "My back is bad, I can't lift anything." Young people nowadays talk all about scientific parenting. Let her figure it out herself. The nurse cast a glance at her but said nothing more. Instead, she propped up the pillow for me herself. As the baby was nestled against my chest, her crying slowly subsided. Her tiny mouth opened and closed, searching eagerly. I looked down at her, and tears began to fall again. Not out of a sense of grievance, but because, suddenly, I felt afraid. Afraid that I wouldn't be able to protect her. Afraid that, from the very moment of her birth, she would have to lie just as I did at the mercy of others' moods. Afraid that the first welcome gift this family would offer her would not be love, but disdain. At 11 o'clock that night, Gu Qingzhou finally sent me a message. Not a phone call. Nor a voice message. Just 4 words. "Has the baby been born?" I stared at those 4 words for a long, long time. The baby slept beside me, her little face flushed pink, her breathing as light as a wisp of cotton. I replied to him. "She's here. A daughter." There was a silence on his end that lasted over 10 minutes. Then, finally, a reply. "Got it. You get some rest, the signal is bad over here." The signal is bad. Yet his WeChat moments seemed to be updating just fine. 10 minutes earlier, he had posted another photo. This time, it was taken at a seaside restaurant. On the table sat red wine and grilled lobster, while Amanda rested her chin on the back of her hand, smiling into the camera. Gu Qingzhou's face wasn't visible, but his hand was right at the corner of the table. And there, too, was the watch I had bought him last year, the one I'd had to grit my teeth to afford. Back then, his company was facing a cash crunch, and he wore a look of perpetual worry. I handed over the money I'd spent years saving, telling him that a man out in the business world needed to maintain a certain front. He held me close and said, "Wan Qing, once I make it big, I promise I'll give you a good life." When people speak, they always assume they'll remember their words. But some promises, the moment they pass the lips, are like water poured into sand. They vanish without leaving a single trace. I turned off my phone. Slowly, silence settled over the hospital room. The night shift nurse walked with a feather-light tread, and occasionally, the cry of an infant drifted in from the hallway. Outside the window, car headlights swept across the wall, flashing bright, then dim like someone arriving at the door only to turn and leave. It was past 2 in the morning, and the baby had started crying again. I braced myself and tried to sit up, but the pain made me gasp sharply. Shen Huilan, lying on the visitor's chair, rolled over and mumbled groggily, "Let her cry for a bit. You can't pick a baby up the moment she cries, you'll spoil her." Gritting my teeth, I slowly lifted the baby into my arms. The moment she settled into my embrace, her cries softened. Her little face pressed against my chest, warm and soft like a freshly steamed bun. "Don't be afraid," I whispered. It was a phrase meant for her, yet just as much for myself. Just then, a gentle double knock sounded at the ward door. Assuming it was a nurse, I looked up and said, "Come in." The door opened. It wasn't a nurse who entered. It was an old man. He appeared to be around 70, dressed in a dark gray Zhongshan suit and leaning on an old wooden walking stick. His hair was entirely white and neatly combed, yet his eyes were not clouded by age. Instead, they resembled an ancient well, still, deep, and bottomless. He stood in the doorway, first glancing at me, then shifting his gaze to the baby in my arms. That look was peculiar. It held neither the idle curiosity of a stranger, nor the affectionate delight of an elder admiring a newborn. Instead, his eyes held a mixture of shock, sorrow, and a tremor of suppressed trembling that had been buried for years. Instinctively, I tightened my hold on the baby. "Who are you looking for?" The old man did not answer immediately. He took 2 slow steps closer, his gaze fixing on the edge of the baby's swaddling blanket. Pinned there was a small, old brooch. It was a keepsake left behind by my mother. Silver, crescent moon-shaped brooch, an antique design with the small character 星号 Qing 星号engraved on the back. Before entering the delivery room, acting on a strange impulse, I had tucked it into my hospital bag. After the baby was born, I asked a nurse to pin it onto her swaddle for me. I couldn't quite explain why. Perhaps I simply wanted my mother to see her granddaughter. Upon seeing the brooch, the old man's fingers suddenly trembled. His walking stick tapped softly against the floor, making a faint sound. Roused by the noise, Shen Huilan sat up with a frown. "Who are you? What gives you the right to barge into someone's hospital room in the middle of the night?" The old man seemed not to hear her words. He looked only at me, his voice low and deliberate. "Is your mother, named Su Mingwe?" I froze completely. Inside the room, the baby let out a soft whimper. Just then, the headlights of a passing car outside the window swept across the old man's deeply lined face. I could hear the pounding of my own heart, each beat heavier than the last. "You knew my mother?" The old man closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, the corners were already tinged with red. He offered no explanation. Instead, he simply reached into his pocket, pulled out a yellowed, old photograph, and slowly held it out toward me. In the picture stood my mother, as she was more than 20 years ago. Young, slender, dressed in a white blouse, standing beneath an ancient locust tree. Beside her stood a middle-aged man. That man's features, his eyes and brows, bore a striking resemblance to the old man standing before me now. They were at least 70 or 80% alike. On the back of the photograph, a line of faded handwriting read, "Xinghao Mingwei, should the day ever come that Wanqing finds herself in peril, the debt the Zhou family owes you must finally be repaid, Xinghao." I stared at those words, my fingers growing cold, little by little. Shen Huilan leaned in to take a look as well. She couldn't make sense of the text, yet she instinctively sensed that something was amiss. Her voice immediately rose to a shrill pitch. "What Zhou family? What debt? Lin Wanqing, what kind of shady characters have you gone and gotten yourself mixed up with this time?" Only then did the old man turn to look at her. Just a single glance. The rest of Shen Huilan's tirade caught in her throat. It was not a look of ferocity. But it was heavy, profoundly heavy. It felt like a massive, solid door suddenly slamming shut right in her face. The old man spoke. "She has just given birth, keep your voice down." Shen Huilan's face flushed red, then drained pale. "What business is it of yours?" "I'm her mother-in-law." The old man nodded. "Mother-in-law." He uttered the 2 words in a flat, even tone. Then, his gaze shifted to the cup of water by the bedside that had gone completely cold, to the empty thermos flask, to my own pale, parched lips, and finally, to the thick cashmere shawl draped over the visitor's chair where Shen Huilan sat. Finally, his gaze settled back upon the child's face. "So Xinghao, the Xinghao is how your Gu family looks after a woman who has just given birth." Shen Huilan opened her mouth, ready to unleash a tirade. But suddenly, 2 more people entered through the doorway. One was a middle-aged man in a black suit, the other, a woman carrying an insulated container. The woman moved with gentle precision. As she opened the container, a cloud of warm steam instantly billowed out. Millet porridge, clear fish broth, warm herbal confinement water, and a clean, soft swaddling blanket for the baby. The air of bleak desolation that had hung over the ward was suddenly, if only slightly, dispelled by that rising warmth. The old man spoke to the woman. "Let her eat something first." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Mr. Zhou, who exactly Xinghao are Xinghao you?" The old man fell silent for a few seconds. He reached out his hand, appearing as if he meant to touch the child's forehead, yet he paused midair. Then, as if afraid of startling her, he slowly withdrew it. "My name is Zhou Jingshan," he said. "Years ago, your mother saved my son's life." My throat tightened. My mother had never told me about this. As if sensing my bewilderment, The old man lowered his voice further. She forbade us from seeking you out. She said that while her daughter's Xinghao fate Xinghao might be bitter, her Xinghao heart Xinghao was not. She told us not to disturb you unless it was a matter of absolute necessity. He paused. His gaze fell upon the mobile phone lying beside my hospital bed. The screen had not yet fully dimmed, it remained frozen on Gu Qingzhou's last message, bad signal. The old man took one look and understood everything. Now, he said, it's Xinghao is Xinghao a matter of absolute necessity. As those words hung in the air, the hospital ward fell into a sudden, profound silence. Cradling the baby in my arms, I lowered my head to gaze at her tiny face. In that moment, I did not know what this old man's arrival would bring. Nor did I know how utterly shattered this family would become once Gu Qingzhou finally returned. I knew only this, from the delivery room to this hospital ward, from the posts on my social feed to that glass of cold water I had already walked the loneliest, most heart-freezing path a woman could ever be forced to walk. From this point forward, it would be someone else's turn to walk it. Outside the window, dawn had not yet broken. Yet the old man stood in the doorway, like a lamp that had arrived many years too late. Its light was not blinding. But at long last, it shone down upon me and my child.